So I was watching on various Facebook groups, and one of the things that came out as quite interesting was a comment about, "Are you looking to get out of dentistry?" And the comments that came back in were quite interesting, and there were lots of people who are looking to get out of dentistry, and they're not necessarily all practice owners. There'll be a mixture of practice owners and associates.
Wow.
But it did start me thinking that if there are so many people thinking about getting out of dentistry, and I appreciate it's only a comment on a Facebook group, so it may not carry through, what implications that has for us in terms of practice sales.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I mean, that's I can understand the practice owners thinking that, you know, flipping it, recession, COVID, furloughing, I've just had enough, so I want to get out. It's an interesting one, isn't it, that some of the non-practice owners are thinking about it. But I suppose you also got the fact of that those are probably a relatively small number to the number of associates who are now thinking, I need to try and capitalise on these times now and have my own destiny in my own hands rather than working for someone else.
I think that was coming through. I think that was coming through in the comments. I think people were realising that as an associate, you've become quite vulnerable, and if that is matched by practice owners who are in a situation where they feel the time's come for them, because there's always going to be lots of people who are planning to sell at this time anyway, and the pandemic kind of got in the way of their plans. So those people are looking to sell regardless. And I do wonder whether it's going to bring more people to the table in terms of people wanting to sell. So we could see an increased supply of practices matched by an increased demand at about the same time.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because you do feel that they're, you know, I don't know, what's this? Is this week 5, week 6 of lockdown? And you think that there's no doubt about it, the conversations that I'm having, and I know the conversations that the rest of us are having, is definitely about the next step. And you've got principals who are saying, I think I'm going to go. And equally, I think we're registering buyers who are saying, I'm vulnerable and I think this is a time for me to push on. I mean, what was that solicitor saying to us? That they've seen contracts being renegotiated to 40%, was it? I can't remember that.
Yeah. I suppose the issue that you've got as a practice owner, okay, pushing to one side one moment that associates hadn't been paid because they fall into that horrible category of earning too much and not. But as a business owner, when you come back, surely you're going to want to get your profitability up and hopefully back to somewhere like it was pre-COVID as soon as possible. And sadly, one of your great variable costs that you can play with is either to reduce your reliance on associates and do more dentistry yourself, or cut the pay rate to your associates.
Yeah, because it's a direct cost, isn't it?
Yes.
I mean, it's quite interesting,
it's a brutal reality, but
I say it's quite interesting when you look at it on the economics. You know, if you've got let's say you got a £500,000 practice and your associate's doing £250,000 of that, and you're going to be able to save, you know, they're generating, I don't know, let's say simplistically, they're being paid 50%. Well, if you can save yourself 10% of their, that's a significant amount of money to go to your bottom line, which, you know, as we know, that there may be extra demands on PPE and what you do, and potentially some slowdowns in the number of patients you can treat. But actually, if you think that's a profit figure, not just an income number, that's a profit figure. You know, that goes straight to your bottom line. It's quite an interesting change, really. And as you say, if Facebook posts are saying, you know, well, I think might be time for a change. Interesting.
And I wonder as well whether it's going to look a bit like when we came out of the last recession. You know, we went in late 2008. 2009, 2010 coming through it. And I do wonder whether the buyers are going to behave in a similar way, in that they're still going to see NHS practices as being the comfortable place to be, then plan-based practices, and whether private fee income practices may take a hit.
I think it'll be interesting because there's no doubt about it. You know, that you're going to get your NHS payment, and they might be deducting 20% or whatever it is for consumables, but you've still got regular income. You know, if you look at Dem Plan, I think are still collecting payments. Practice Planner giving you 50% off. Is it 3 months of your admin fee? Yeah. But you're still getting your revenue, and then the private fees may be the last bit to recover. And then it's an interesting one, because I think, and you know, listening to these guys in the Facebook groups, it's quite interesting how some guys are very positive about the whole thing and saying, well, actually, there's a tsunami of pent-up demand that's sort of going to go washing through. And then there's other guys that are saying, oh, I'm not really too sure. I mean, it's interesting. I can't remember who it was. Someone made a comment the other day. Was it Liz? About the fact of she wonders whether people coming out of lockdown actually will want to have some of those feel-good dental treatments to make themselves feel better, which is an interesting one as well. It
surprise me if lots of people want to get to the hygienist, lots of people are doing elective whitening, because there's lots of chatter that hairdressers are going to open quite quickly because people want to get out and kind of tidy themselves up and feel good about themselves.
Yeah, feel better about themselves.
Lots of those treatments. I think that the private fees may recover more quickly than people think. I think people want to get out and start living normally and do the sorts of things that people did pre-COVID. And I just think that they're going to bounce back quicker than perhaps they would have out of a recession. And I guess from our point of view in terms of sales, that then starts to impact on valuations and how that gets factored into the mix, because this is such an extraordinary situation. If practices recover quite quickly, it may just be one of those periods in time that just needs to be understood in terms of the impact it had on that business for that window.
Yeah, it's like a blip, isn't it?
The thing is, there's still an underlying good business. The patient base is still there. The patients still need to be treated. They still want to buy treatment. But in that 6-9 month window, it all just went wrong.
Well, what's interesting is that if you sort of go pre-COVID and we had a practice that had lost an associate for, say, 4 to 6 months, then there wouldn't have been an adjustment in value. And more importantly, the buyers wouldn't have expected an adjustment in value, because they'd have just said, oh, it's one of those things.
Yeah, so, like a broken arm or something like that.
You know, so in a way, COVID is sort of, it's not the same thing, but from an income point of view, you lose the income, and okay, you might have had a bit of income collected by an associate, but it's sort of the same sort of thing. You're going to lose a chunk of income. When it then comes in, you're going to be able to see that income grow. And in reality, most transactions take somewhere between 6 and 9 months. So you would hope toward, even if someone made an offer now, which they are, which is great, but by the time you actually come to complete it, we should know a bit more about the PPE, what conditions you're going to have to work for, what that does on a volume point of view. Because also the flip side of that, isn't it, that, okay, you might have to spend more time disinfecting the surgery so you get to see less patients, but then depending on what your pricing was, you might be able to factor that into your pricing model, so even though you see less people, you make the same amount of money. I say it'll be interesting, I think, with the UDAs. What's the government going to say about, if you can't see as many people as you used to see, what does that do for your UDA contract?
Over the course of a year, what does true delivery look like? I suppose the hardening thing is, for the market to thrive, you need 3 things. You need buyers, sellers, of which it would appear that they're both still there based on our experience so far, and also the banks. And because healthcare, we know, is a very low risk, green light sector, it always has been. And I imagine there's going to be a very strong push from central government to make sure the banks start lending to bring the economy back.
Yeah, definitely.
In the days of old, when we used to be in the city, you always looked to lend in a market that was safe and secure, and that's healthcare. So I would expect the banks still to be there supporting people. The deals might look slightly different, but if you've got buyers, sellers, and the banks on board, those are the critical 3 elements to make sure that a market can continue to push forward.
Yeah, and I think that the thing is, as we've said before, this didn't happen because they were badly performing businesses.
No,
it didn't happen because there was a recession caused by, if you go back 2008, 2009, it wasn't like that. This is a one-off recession that's been caused by this COVID thing and a basically shutdown of economies around the world. So you would sort of think that once that has been released, for want of a better choice of words, that you would expect to see the private fees recover, because it's not like the patients have gone away. And currently, depending on how long the furloughing lasts, you've still got people that are going to be earning money in May and June. And by then, hopefully, the economy will start to sort of get itself going, really.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, I think there's an awful lot in there that we don't know. This is such an unusual, uncharted situation. It's hard. You can't say it's like the recession. It was like this. It was like that. It's extraordinary. And I do wonder whether it will almost be incubated as a period of time. And in 6 or 9 months' time, is just accepted that was that period, and that shouldn't necessarily influence how that business performs ongoing, because it affected everybody. I don't necessarily think it's going to impact on the value. The only thing that potentially it may have is, depending on the mix and the profile of the practice, whether it's going to impact on how the practice is paid for. I agree. There's the potential that there might be an argument for some practices, very few, but there might be some where there is a deferred element to allow time for that practice to recover. But I only see that happening for a relatively short period of time, because practices, I think, are going to recover fairly quickly. So there's probably going to be about a 6 or 9 month window when it hasn't quite recovered, quite reasonably. The seller's looking to achieve their market value. The buyer might be a bit nervous about that. So there possibly is going to be a deferred consideration for a short period of time until things then stabilise, and then we go back to business as it was before, particularly lots of buyers who are keen to get on board and buy.
Yeah, I think it'll also be interesting, won't it, as to what sellers' appetite is like. Is it going to be one of those ones where you're going to get some that are saying, well, everything's great, so therefore I want really, really top dollar? Or are you going to get a number of principals who say, to be honest, that was so horrendous. I know you think it's worth £1 million, but I'll quite happily take 900,000 because I just want to be done. It'll be interesting to see. I think the danger is also that I think some of the buyers think that the market is going to collapse, so therefore they're sniffing around trying to find this sort of bargain, and there might be bargains to be had, but I think it will be dependent upon how the principal wants to run it rather than the actual market itself. Does that make sense? There'll be somebody who says, I just want to go, I don't really care whether I get 500,000, 600,000.
that will be the difference between those who were going to sell anyway and then the category which is the straw that broke the camel's back. It's going to be those people who are exhausted, frustrated and worn out by the whole process. They may not necessarily be so bothered about what they exit with. And it also may come down to how good dentistry has been for the principal for the last 10, 15, 20 years. They may be in the luxurious position of being able to not be that worried about their exit value.
I tell you where I think it's really interesting. Imagine, we've always said that the poor principal who's on his own, he's a one-man band, really, in the fact that he is everything in that practice. And can you imagine doing all the HR and the furloughing stuff and the stuff to make the projections for the bank and things like that on your own? I mean, hats off to the guys. I mean, man, it must be so hard. If we think about
ourselves, we've got, I guess, a senior management team of 5 people, and we've been sharing that burden across us all. We've all been so incredibly busy trying to make sure that we don't miss anything. I mean, just furlough and the HMRC portal in itself constantly keeps changing. What you do on a Tuesday changes on a Wednesday. You then put something onto the portal that then doesn't give you the result back that you're expecting to see. But then that's just one element, and you've got everything else to do. If you're applying for a CBILS loan, the hoops and the information you need to supply for that. It really is something over and above what's expected of people on a normal basis.
It's sort of funny, isn't it? You think we do those courses, and I'm just thinking of the building business competence course that we run, to make you become and help you become a better principal and understand how your business. And I'm just thinking there's that slot where we say you're the HR director, you're the finance director, you're the ops director, you're the marketing director, the sales and marketing, you're a husband, you're a wife, you're a partner, you're a whatever it is. And then we say, oh, and you're a dentist. And then what you then say is to them is, well, actually, this takes up 90% of your day, but actually is in relation to everything else, is just part of your job. And the only thing they've lost in this time is that bit of doing hands-on dentistry. All the other bits are still there.
And also there's a new circle, which is the COVID recovery manager.
Yeah.
You're responsible for
definitely,
putting it all together and making sure that actually the thing knits and works. So,
was it Chris Barrow? I can't remember. I think one of his posts, he said something about the fact of opening soon a new surgery near you, a new practice near you. And basically what it was the fact of reinventing your own practice, because ultimately they're going to have to look to change what they do. And how's that sales and marketing? Do they need to do sales and marketing? How are they going to do it? When are they going to do it? What are they going to do? It's a fascinating, but to do it on your own is like, oh man. And then that feeds into the fact there'll be people who say, you know what, I've had enough.
Not for me. I'm out.
I am done and dusted. I'm going. But it's all very positive for the market. As you say, I think that there's going to be that constant balancing of people wanting to sell. I think there will be increased numbers of people wanting to buy, because I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure even in recession, that whilst associates didn't suffer anywhere near as badly as they've suffered now. I think I remember private fees being lost in NHS practices, but at least the dentist was still doing NHS work and getting UDAs. Whereas some of the stories we hear, that principals are not necessarily being particularly forthright with income. It's quite an interesting change, really.
Well, I suppose it's that thing, isn't it? When your back's to the wall and, it's every man for himself, it's a brutal reality, but people are starting to need to, recoil into the corner and look after themselves. And as we've seen, and it's been posted many times, there's been lots of debate about the vulnerability of being an associate because of their earning level, because of the way it's structured, and because they're self-employed. They found themselves in a really awkward position. So, it's like we might look back on this in a few months' time and say, hey, we got it completely wrong, because we just don't know. But it might be that we need to have this similar conversation in a few weeks' time as it starts to develop.
Yeah, we should we should go back and and listen to it again and go, oh, okay, update 2 or something.
Yeah, we got some right, but an awful lot wrong.
But it moves so quickly, which is interesting. But I think the general principles are right. You're going to have more buyers. I think you'll have more sellers. And I think, as you said, the banks are going to want to lend money for business purposes, not just a coronavirus loan.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
The reality of it is that's not wonderfully. Whilst it might increase your lending portfolio, it's more recovery rather than actually progression.
Yeah, it's not investment for growth, like you say. It's protection money, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.